Hi, I'm Cody Alexander with MatchQuarters.com. Welcome to the Art of X show. This is going to be episode 1. I'm kind of excited for doing this new project. Each week, I'm going to bring you kind of a different mixed bag of football. It may be about the article I just posted, maybe about something that went on the week before. But I'm here to talk ball. That's my favorite thing to do. Obviously, if you visited MatchQuarters.com at all, you understand I kind of have a passion for this game, something I want to do. So me being able to talk about it, even better. So think of this as what you want. It's kind of a football show. It's a podcast. It's a blog. It's whatever you want to call it. So we're going to get started. So welcome. Thanks for being on episode 1. Today is going to be kind of a preview of what our Blitz of the month is. And I think it's a good example of taking a team that a lot of people don't think about in Tulsa Hurricanes. You know, when I say Tulsa Hurricanes, a lot of people don't think about defense, but they have been one of the better defenses in the G5 for the past couple of years. And really, I want to talk about their three high structure. That's kind of what this topic is going to be about. So let's talk about first the rise of the three high. Back in 2017, we started seeing this in Ames, Iowa. Now, the odd stack has been around forever. I think the 3-3-5, and most people are well versed with the 3-3-5 or have had experience with it, have either coached against it or have coached in it. So that's nothing new. What is new, though, is kind of the iteration of it, the modern iteration of it that we saw in Ames, Iowa with Haycock and Campbell creating that and really kind of taking the Big 12 by storm. It's kind of the air raid killer per se early on in 2017. So we saw the rise in that, and really it's done nothing but grown popularity. I mean, you go to Friday or Saturday nights and you're going to see the three high system that was kind of created in Ames, and people have taken it and kind of run with it. Now we've seen different versions of it. We saw the Phil Snow version of it at Baylor, which was really, it was an odd stack. It was a 3-3-5, a lot of cover one, a lot of pressures. But using that three high system and using the top down, I think that's the biggest thing that we're seeing. I mean, in the NFL, everybody talks about the Fangio system and the Staley system of how they take safeties and they align them deep and then they rotate to middle of the field close coverages. That's kind of what Phil Snow did at Baylor in 2019. He kind of took the Big 12 by storm, gave Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley a lot of problems, almost won a Big 12 championship underneath that, got Matt Rule basically the job at Carolina. So to me, that's kind of in the mold that we're seeing. Then we go to Cincinnati last year and then again this year, and just how their cover one version of the three high system with mugging backers, which just means they're lining up a backer on top of a guard, mugging the B gap, moving those guys around, playing a lot of cover one, and then just leveraging the defense. I think that the biggest thing to me is this is a leverage defense more than it is anything. And so then you have the Cincinnati version. Now, Tulsa is kind of in the line of everybody else, right? They're taking that Iowa State system and they're kind of running with it. I think if you turn on the Big 12 at all anymore, you turn on the American Athletic Conference, the AAC, where Tulsa plays, there's a lot of three high systems going in. Now, you go more towards Power 5 and things like that, you're just not seeing it as much. I think you're seeing more of the tight mint stuff, the Aranda, Saban mint stuff. But at the G5, where you're not going to get the premium defensive linemen, and then you look at the high school levels and kind of the small college levels, it makes sense to run the three high system. What are you going to be able to get a lot of in that? And that's a tweener. So I want to definitely break down this defense, and that's what we're going to do today on today's episode. So, look, first off, let's look at what Tulsa needs. Okay, Tulsa offensively is a variation of the Briles system. In fact, it's probably the truest Briles system that you're going to see, because it's Philip Montgomery, the head coach, running it, who was with Art Briles from the beginning all the way back in the Stephenville days. So you're going to see kind of that on one end. On the defensive side, you're going to see a defense that looks a lot like Iowa State. The AAC is a very diverse landscape, a lot of different variations of the spread. So it makes sense to go to something that kind of gives you answers in everything, and that's what they get. Tulsa has been kind of middle of the range, kind of that above average defense. There's about 130 teams in FBS So if you look at them statistically and analytically, EPA, they're above 40, which puts them again above average. If you look at their defense efficiency, again, they're above 50, they're above average. So, if you think about it that in terms of that, and we're looking at about 65 is the middle point. If you're above 50, that means you're above average. So that's usually pretty good, kind of what they are, right? So what does this defense bring? In terms of structure, it's malleable, meaning that they've got a bunch of DBs, and that's kind of what the three high system brings to you. Is you have so many advantages with coverage rotations that you really can do almost anything you want. It's almost in the sense of you can bring everybody but the field corner. So when you can do that, you can rotate guys, and 10 of your 11 guys can be in the pressure at any time. Can't sit in Tampa. That's the other thing about this, and I think that it's not a Tampa 2 defense. It is kind of a bastardized version of the Tampa 2, but we have now moved past that. Like, we're post Tampa 2, right? So we're moving past that, I think, with what Phil Snow did at Baylor, and then what we saw with Freeman at Cincinnati, and even Tressel this year, adding a 4-down element to it. Kind of gives you kind of where we're starting to move along. So you can't just sit in Tampa. I mean, like anything, if you just sit in it and you're static, you're going to end up getting into trouble. The middle safety is used to close the middle of the field. I mean, that's kind of the obvious answer for a lot of things. What does the spread want to attack? They want to attack B gaps, and they want to attack the middle of the field. Now, at the NFL level and at the college level, when you see a lot of cover 3 teams in middle of the field close, you're going to get a lot of the crossing routes. Well, what this does is it plays hard corners on the outside to trap the flats. So you're not going to get those RPO screens, those horizontal screens, which anymore, a lot of people have moved away from those to begin with. Now you're getting more in-breaking RPOs. Well, when you put a middle of the safety right there at 10 yards on top of the center, it's really hard to now throw those in-breaking RPOs in the crossing routes. I think the Y over concept in the air raid scheme has really kind of taken off, and I think a lot of people use that in other crossing routes to kind of get the middle of the field, to attack the middle of the field. Well, because you've got the middle safety sitting there, it's really easy to close that down, and then you have your inside linebackers that can now focus on the run game. 5 to 6 DBs allows for almost endless rotation. So you can bring a multitude of those guys. And really the structure of this puts 2 guys on the hash, 1 guy in the middle of the field. So you can almost rotate anything. You can bring one of those guys down, move the middle safety over, bring a corner, move everybody over. So any of your coverage rotations, whether you want to run quarters, middle of the field open, or you want to run middle of the field close, you can do that. And so that's kind of what Tulsa brings. It's that Iowa State system, but it's their version. It's Joe Gillespie's version. So let's talk about the basics of the 3 high system. This is essentially what you're going to see when you get into a 3 high versus 10 personnel. Easiest way to teach this stuff is to start with 10 personnel 2x2 and then kind of move from there. So in this, you have the front is going to be what you call back. Just means that the 4 eye is going to be into the back. So you've closed down the B gap. Your nose is going to lag, so he's going to close the A gap to the running back. That allows your Sam linebacker out there to control the C gap. A lot of times you see this cover 2 is what you're going to see out of this. And so because of that, because you're cutting the corners, you're trapping. So we're going to do what everybody does as a base, which is that Tampa. He is a wall 2 player, so he can close that C gap if he needs to. The Mike is really a ball fit. You're playing probably a heavy technique. As the 5 technique away, meaning that if he gets zoned to him, he's going to close the B gap, which again allows the will linebacker to stay outside. That nose is going to lag and try and close those A gaps. So you're really kind of a 2 gapper right there, which kind of frees up that Mike. The Mike can kind of rock back with the quarterback if it is a zone read, or he can stay front side on the A gap. So if they get that running back, what they're trying to do is basically funnel everything into the A gap, which if you've dealt with the spread at all, that's something that they don't want to do. They don't want to run the ball in the A gap. They're not running A gap power. This isn't North Dakota State. They're not getting under center and just running A gap power till the cows come home. No, it's spread. They want to spread you out. They want to attack the B gaps. They want to try and attack the tackles. And this essentially gives the Tulsa defense compressing everything. If you're going to run in the A gap, it's going to be in a phone booth. Either it's going to roll out the back door and we're going to have two guys there, or it's going to roll out the front door where the will linebacker and the Mike's able to track that. Now, the middle safety is what you call a 3-fit, and that's an Iowa State term. I think it's probably one of the better ways of teaching it. He is reading the number 3 receiver. If the number 3 receiver is in the backfield, then he is going to fit off of the number 3 receiver. Well, the number 3 receiver is the running back. So if it's zone, he's going to sink down into the box, and then that allows that Mike now, if he makes a mistake, let's say the Mike rocks to the C gap, he thinks the quarterback's going to pull it. Okay, so he rocks to the C gap. Well, that middle safety now can fit into the A gap. So he's essentially tracking the running back from 10 yards. Now, in 3-by-1, everybody kind of shifts over. Okay, you get everybody to move over one, and that Sam can either stay attached to the box or he can move out. Normally, what you see in this system is kind of a super rotation where the field safety goes and stays on top of number 2, the middle safety stays on top of number 3, and then the Sam linebacker either lines up connected to the box inside number 3 or can cover down and stay in between. So it's almost like if you were running like solo coverage. Now you've got a tight end in the game. The defensive line goes to a 505. Mike and Will get into a 30. Middle safety is still fitting off of this. And the key here is he's going to fit off butt side of the tight end. So the guy in yellow, he's going to fit off of him. So if he comes across, he fits off inside. If he goes front side, he fits off inside. If he goes vertical, I've got him man-to-man. So that what it does is you create your triangle coverage over 1 and 2. You've got your Mike and your middle safety on top of number 3, and then you've got your Will, your boundary corner and boundary safety over that triangle of those receivers. Now, the 5s are playing what you would call, a lot of times you hear it's called fist or it's called splatter in these systems. And all that means is I kind of like splatter because you're attacking the via the tackle and you're going to splatter into the B gap. You're just going to contact and then work into the B gap. So I kind of like splatter technique. I call it a heavy, but in this odd front, you normally hear it as a splatter technique. So those are kind of the basics of what you're going to see in the 3-high. So again, it's a leverage defense. They're taking the overhangs and they're not really letting anybody get to the edge. Okay, so you've either got a Sam linebacker or you've got a middle safety or a boundary safety, depending on coverage. They want to use the middle safety in pressures. So that's one of the nice things about this defense is that you have the ability to use these guys on pressures. Okay, location. The middle safety in the middle of the field allows him to either work into the box, work to the edge of the box, or replace somebody in coverage. The other nice thing is because of his location towards the box, you can utilize him without tipping off the offense. So you can appear to be a Tampa 2 shell every single time. Like we can line up static every time. You can get 5 across, and then at the snap of the ball, it's just mass chaos. So that's kind of one of my favorite pressures from this whole entire system, and kind of illustrating how you can utilize the middle safety is the Alamo burn pressure, which is essentially a fire zone and bringing the middle safety up the middle of the field. So it's a typical, what you would call a jet front if you were in a 4-down. You put your Sam linebacker and your end on as 5s. You put your other end and your nose as 3s, and then you align your Mike and Will in the A gaps. And then the star in the Iowa State system works down on top of the running back, and it makes it look like it's man-to-man, right? It makes it look like, okay, they're going to be in 0 coverage, and then all of a sudden he hits the A gap, and the free safety slings into the middle of the field. You end up getting into this fire zone 3 coverage, which Iowa State calls burn. So in this week's Blitz of the month, we have I call Spurs add 0. Now it's going to attack the back. What is Spurs? Spurs is a 6-man pressure. Tulsa's going to use this in the low red zone. It's a fire zone path. Okay, the typical NCAA fire zone path, except for the outside guy is not going to come underneath, and he's going to stay outside on contain, and you're going to wrap the inside guy into the B gap. And then what Tulsa does is they add the middle safety overhang away to kind of work into the middle of the field as a rat. I like this in the low red zone because you kind of have an idea of what you're going to get. You're going to challenge the receivers with catch coverage, and then you're going to have a rat in case any of them cross. So you're going to get rubbed. So if they bring it in tight, you're going to go ahead and get them on different levels. If they do that, what you're going to get. You're going to get a rub route. If they stay wide, you're going to get slants, you're going to get outs, or you're going to get fades. So you kind of have an idea of what you're doing. And DBs are going to play catch coverage, or a lot of people call it scoots or inch coverage. So you're going to get that. You're going to make contact. What I tell my DBs is that line in the goal line, you have to be carried across. So we're going to hammer that down. I like this because it attacks the running back. One, it forces the running back to stay in. And then the other thing is that make the running back block. Running backs aren't great at blocking, okay, traditionally. Most of them aren't. Now, the ones that are, they make money in the NFL. The ones that aren't, it's hard to keep you on the field. And then use non-traditional players, which is the middle safety. So here is a diagram of the blitz so you can see what it is. You've got the nickel who kind of mugs up on the outside. He's going to swing and use what I call vision or an eyes technique. I like this better than dropping out the DN because now you have a coverage person that understands coverage. Okay, he's looking and he understands that you're probably going to get anything. Memphis went ahead and stacked them, so you can see that the free safety and the field corner, they actually got on different levels. The boundary safety is going to have the tight end, and then the boundary corner is going to have the number one receiver. The joker or the middle safety is going to kind of stay at the top of the box. He's going to let the fire zone kind of take place, and then you're going to see him come in. And so, to me, this is a great way to attack the back and attack a team in a passing situation. It's good against the run as well because you're kind of loading up on that zone side. That nickel's going to kind of fold inside anyway. And so you've got enough eyes on there that you're going to be able to withstand it. Now let's talk a little bit about Joe Gillespie going to TCU. I think it's a good fit. He's a Texas guy. He's from Stephenville. He understands kind of the recruiting nature of here. It's going to be a big win for Dykes in terms of camaraderie with the high school coaches here in the state. Now it gives him a little bit of a bigger platform at TCU. But I think what Gillespie is going to do at TCU is the same thing that he did at Tulsa. Gary Patterson has already been a hybrid defense. He's going to have hybrid players to him. So I think that this is really going to be kind of a good match. Obviously, it's going to depend on the players, but I still think the Big 12 landscape calls for a three-high system if you're going to run it. I do think that he's a great developer of talent. Xavier Collins is somebody that kind of came out of nowhere, was a first-round draft pick for the Cardinals. I know he's struggling a little bit right now in the NFL, but that's a kid that he took from nobody wanted to offer him in Oklahoma. Nobody knew about him, and then made him a first-round draft pick. They've had solid defenses. He's a simple defensive coordinator, and what that means is that they're not going to run a bunch of exotic stuff. They're not going to get themselves into trouble. They're going to run simple things, and they're going to do it. They're going to do it fast. And again, it goes with the nature of the business, which is hybridization. So I think what we're seeing right now, all across the landscape, is the hybridization is in full effect. I think more and more people are starting to tinker with drop 8 coverages, whether they're a 4 down or a 3 down. You're seeing a lot more teams move to a 3-high system, or at least kind of tinkering with it. I love what Knowles did at Oklahoma State with the 4 down, playing it from a 3-high. It gives teams another situation that they can hybridize. It gives them another answer to problems. You saw the same thing with Tressel at Cincinnati, being kind of that bouncing around from their regular 3-high system that everybody kind of fell in love with last year to adding in some 4 down elements. So I think what you see too with a lot of these, and even with the hybridization, just the players, but also a scheme, is Kirby Smart in an interview earlier this year talked about how they've become more of a sim and a creeper defense. They want to attack, but at the same time, they don't want to just wholesale attack everybody at the same time. Just send the house all the time and run all these exotic pressures. I think if you've paid attention to Georgia at all, you go to this year and they've kind of calmed down. They played a lot slower, and by slower, I just mean that they've really just kind of calmed the waters down. Not that they couldn't be more exotic or anything like that. It's just that when you have elite talent on the D line and you kind of are dominating everybody, there's no need to go with all these crazy pressures all the time. The other thing, a part of it is twofold, is that the offenses have also changed. Now you're seeing more condensed sets. You're seeing fast motions early. You're seeing ID checks where people will line up somewhere and then they'll move into the backfield or they'll move across. A lot more check with me in that sense. And so what do you do as a defense to counter that is that you run safe pressures. It used to be the fire zone was a safe pressure. You're going to send 5, you're going to play 3 under 3 deep. Well, that you're losing a man in coverage. So what has replaced that as in terms of safe pressure has been these simulated pressures and these creeper pressures that you're seeing at a high tick in college. And because of that trickle down from the NFL, from the condensed sets, the early motions, a lot more wide zone. People are kind of running the ball again, but then also throwing the ball on first down. So you can't just sit in base anymore. If you want to send some pressure, you're going to have to get a little bit more interesting in terms of your creeper pressures and your sim pressures. And the nice thing about it is you still have a 7-man distribution. You still have a 4 down front, and it doesn't really affect your fits that much. So to me, I think what we're seeing is what I wrote about in hybrids in 2017 is kind of that full effect of the hybridization. We're kind of coming into kind of everybody's kind of starting to establish themselves. We're kind of getting a little bit of homeostasis a little bit. So people are kind of figuring it out. Offenses are now kind of trying, now they're getting stopped. I mean, look at the Big 12. The Big 12 was a defensive league this year. For the life of me, I haven't seen a Big 12 be a defensive league since I was a kid. So now we're kind of seeing that full circle. Where are we going to go? Where's the next iteration going to come? Where are we going to go as we start going through the process again? Because what we're seeing now is a more emphasis on wide zone play action, kind of that trickle down from the NFL. These defenses have gone hybrid and lighter. So how is that next iteration going to be? And I think we saw it a little bit with Jim Knowles and then Cincinnati with more utilization of 4 down. Wisconsin ran a ton of peso this year, which is just a 2-4-5. And really it's just 2 edge players. They're outside linebackers. They either take out an end or they take out a nose and they put an extra DB in there. But I think you look at what Aranda did this year, playing a lot of nickel for the most part, which is 3 down, which is, tight front, mid front stuff. And then you go and you look at the Georgia played a lot of 4 down this year. Patrick Toney, who's now going to go to Florida, played a lot of more 4 down this year. So you start seeing these kind of different things, and then you're starting to see kind of that trend back to more of a 4 down base, but it's going to look different. It's not going to be, your dad's 4-2-5 or even my 4-2-5. It's going to be a little bit of a different iteration. So that's kind of where we are, kind of where we're headed. Hey, hopefully you enjoyed episode 1. I'm going to try and do this every week as much as I can up until the summer when I start getting rolling with football. So try and make this in the off season. I'll either talk about the article I wrote about that on Monday or what's going on in football. Make sure, again, you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to MatchQuarters.substack.com, where I post an article every week. Everything you need can be found on MatchQuarters.com. Check out the template shop. Check out my books on Amazon. Give me a follow on Twitter, and then follow the hashtag ArtOfX.